Opposed? That's 6, and then Trustee Ma is opposed. Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to item number 2, 2.1, Internal Education Program Update Presentation.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'm going to have the Director of Instruction, David Manuel, introduce our District Vice Principal, and will provide some context regarding an international program update. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Paul Bernard, who is our District Vice Principal for International Education. We're going to hear today a little bit of our past, where we've come from with this program, where we are right now, and a little bit of where we're going in the future years. So, welcome, Paul.
Take one moment to connect here. Well, good evening. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Bernard. I am the District Vice Principal of the International Program for the Chilliwack School District. Very long job title. I tried to make an acronym, but it didn't work very nicely, but we'll go with that. It didn't work out well. So just a bit about myself, if you don't know who I am. I've been in the district for about 23 years. I spent 19 years as a teacher at Sardis Secondary School teaching chemistry and science, and 3.5 years as vice principals in 2 of our secondary schools. In my time, I've been very fortunate to be able to travel with a lot of students around the world, have them experience different sort of learnings by going to different countries, cultures, humanitarian trips. So international education is very dear to my heart. And this is why this world of education is so interesting to me.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Paul, just for 1 second. Excuse me, the gentleman who is filming the audience, you need to stop that or I'm going to ask you to leave.
Filming the speakers.
I'm sorry, you can't be doing that. This is all online. You can knock that off, thanks. Thank you.
No problem, thank you. So for tonight's conversation, I just want to go over 3 things. A bit of a program overview of where we've been, a bit of where we are now, international program, and a bit looking to the future about where we want to go with this program. At any time, please, I welcome any questions, interruptions. If you want more information, any feedback, anything can help us in our department, I'd love to hear it from everybody. So please feel free to stop me anytime. I don't get offended. So the international program started back in 1994 with Glenn and Telio Chechko at the CSS and Bob Young at Vetter Middle School. The program was growing quite a bit. At a point in time, there was an opportunity for making the program a district-wide program. At that point, since 2003, it has been at the district office, and up to about 2020, we've had an enrollment about 120 to 140 students in our program, pretty consistent. We could talk more about that shortly. Luckily for us, as you know, the pandemic was a big thing for many international programs in the world, and luckily at this point in time, we have been able to recuperate back to post-pandemic numbers. So right now in our program, we have about 125 FTEs, so that would be 125 students who are a full course load in our district. And like I mentioned earlier, 2020, 21 were difficult years for our program, as a lot of students weren't able to come or they had to go home. But we've come back strong. There's a lot of interest in Chilliwack in our program, which I can speak to shortly. So the question I get often is, why do we have an international program in our district? What is it that it brings to our students, to our community, to our schools? I think there's 4 things that I think are really important to what an international program does for our school district. First of all, it brings a lot of vibrancy to our district and our schools. Our students in our program are a huge part of our school community. They're very involved in clubs. They take part in teams, lots of extracurricular events. They volunteer in our community. They foster inclusion and kindness by putting their time out there and giving their time to our community while they are our visitors here in Chilliwack. So that speaks huge to the kind of students that want to be part of our program. It brings a lot of perspective to our schools as well. Perspective in that diversity from different students from different parts of the world, differing worldviews into our communities. They help foster development of an educated citizen by really showing different cultures and its different facets. And one thing I find very important about this as well is it's a very reciprocal relationship in that we have our students come here from our different countries, and we always say that we're trying to give them a Canadian experience, a Canadian lifestyle, and give them an experience here in Chilliwack, but it's very reciprocal in that our students actually learn a lot from these international students as well. Not every student in our district has the opportunity or the means to travel around the world and see different cultures, experience that. But we have the ability to bring that to our community and give those students a chance to see things differently through a different lens. And that goes a very long way. For me personally, I think that for student travel is probably the best education a student can have, in that they learn more traveling to a different country, living there, being part of a culture, than they can learn often, in school sometimes. So it's a fantastic opportunity for a lot of our kids and kids come to our city. It creates a lot of depth in our schools. We do have a lot of our students that come finish our program, very high-end, high-achieving students, I should say. Many of them take our AP courses. They participate in pretty much every team that exists in our schools. They run clubs, they're part of clubs. They become a very important part of our school community. And that builds a lot of depth in our schools. It fosters innovation. It gives opportunities for high-quality instruction in our schools when we have these kids part of our community. And lastly, diversity. In our program right now, we have about 161 students from 18 different countries in 7 of our different schools. Chilliwack runs probably one of the most diverse international programs in Canada, in that we have students that come from everywhere. Certain programs may have students more from one country or another, but we've been very fortunate in Chilliwack that we have students from everywhere. Actually, quite a few from all different countries. So that brings a lot of different students to our schools, languages, mindsets, and it's very exciting when you see them interact with our students. And also, the big thing here, the diversity brings a lot of learning opportunities for our kids through human and social connections, learning from their students, their lives. As much as we like to think that, a kid's a kid everywhere, and that's true, but coming to Chilliwack, lifestyle's different, our schools are different, the way we do things is different. And it's nice to introduce our students to that differing way of doing things. It's very exciting to see how they learn. So in our program, what makes our program so successful? It's been running for over 20 years. We've had hundreds of students come through our program. I think the big part that makes our program very successful is the relationships. We go out and we speak to agents, so we work through our partner agencies in different parts of the world. So I can describe a bit about the process. Students, when they come to Chilliwack, they work through a partner agency in different countries. And those agencies prepare all the paperwork, all the flights, all the documentation for the students to come to Canada to study. So one thing that's very important in this role is to have those strong relationships with our partner agencies. They need to know that they're sending their students to a city that's safe, a great program, fantastic schools, world-class education system. Those are the things that we have to, really tell our agents and let them know that we offer here. So relationships are very important. They need to have a face to a name. Often the way I communicate with agents is often through email. So when I became the vice principal's role in August, there was that question, there's a new guy coming in. What's he going to be like? It's going to be a problem. What's going to happen at Chilliwack? So it's very important for you to build those deep relationships with your partner agency so they know who you are. It goes a long way. A handshake and a face goes a long way. One of the things that's very important is to always keep Chilliwack fresh in our minds. We are competing on a world stage. We are literally competing with the English-speaking world to bring students to Chilliwack. There's fantastic programs all over the world that bring students to their district. And we try very hard to do the same thing here, but we offer something to students that they want, right? So one thing that's important for our partner agencies is to keep Chilliwack fresh in mind. Remind them of the beauty of Chilliwack, the vibrancy of our community, the inclusiveness of our schools, the things that we cherish about our community, and the gift that we have here to show that to our partner agencies, and that really attracts them to us. And also, a bit of the experience, it also has to do a bit with the person who's doing the job. I've been in the district for 23 years, and I've worked on 2 different high schools. I know all the administrative staffs. I can walk to school, and every teacher I've worked with at some point. So that familiarity with our school system goes a very long way when I'm being asked questions about courses or programs or teachers or what students are looking for. So that helps quite a bit. Big on relationships. Chilliwack itself, Chilliwack's number 1. It's a very desirable place for students. I'm not pretending when I speak to our partner agencies that we are Vancouver, or we are Burnaby, or we are Whistler, or we're Toronto. We're not. We're Chilliwack. So for us, it's very important to explain what our lifestyle is here, our community, our beauty, our mountains, our rivers, our streams, the things we value in our community.
Sorry, I have to go. I'll talk to you.
Excuse me, please turn off your phone.
Yeah, I just told her I was in the meeting.
Thank you.
Well, don't answer next time, thanks.
So in addition, our city itself is a very safe city. The parents are saying children a long way, and they want to know that's a safe place, and it is. Lots of opportunities for our kids in our schools. speaking to agents and we explain our school system and things we offer, some of our partner agencies have very hard time grasping the concept of what a school in Chilliwack's like, in British Columbia as well. I mean, I give kudos to the whole district, the whole system, that we have amazing programs, amazing schools, and it's somewhere that's very desirable for kids to be. And another thing is our program. We have a very family feel orientation to our program. We are a very close-knit team in our program. Our catchphrase is "come join our family," because that's what we are. We want these students to come to Chilliwack and feel like they're becoming part of our family, our district, our schools, our families as well. Lastly, one thing also makes our program very successful is our in-house homestay program. So some districts, there's two ways of running a homestay program. Some districts will run a program where they have a private company who will do the homestay organization. So they'll have a company who will find the homestay families who have the students live there. And and it works great for some districts. We chose to go the other route, and we have our own homestay coordinator, which is a huge asset to our program. I think the third question I get asked every single time I meet an agent is, do you have your own homestay program? That goes a very long way. It gives us a closer connection to the families that we work with, a closer connection with our students. There's more open communication and attention to detail that we can offer kids that a lot of programs can. And lastly, the supportive culture in our school district. I think in our district, I find that it's a very trustworthy environment that we can work with. It's I understand and I know, and it's been articulated, that this is a district program. It's not just housed in one office in the school board office. This has tentacles that reach out to the whole district, from our schools to our admin teams to our teachers to our transportation departments to the board office. It is a district-wide program, and as such, it has many layers that have to work in unison. So, that relationship with people that are in the school district is very important as well. That makes it a very successful program. We're all on the same team. Having a poor relationship between myself and secondary schools would definitely be a detriment to the program, but luckily we get along very well. And it's you walk in the office and say, hey, I got 3 kids who really want to come, so-and-so, yes, bring them on. We love the international kids. So that relationship goes a very long way. We work very closely with our secondary schools. We invite them into our conversations. We want to know what their challenges and their needs are in running an international program, because it is a stress on the system as far as sometimes bringing kids into a school, because schools are full, so we have to find space for them to make sure things work. And like I said, it's an amazing culture support of our schools, everybody in the district, our senior executive, the board, our departments. It's a lot of support that goes a very long way in running a great program. So we are a small but mighty team. These are 4, well, there's actually 8 key members. I shouldn't say just 4. There's myself as the district vice principal of the ISP. There's Carol Bond, who's our 60% part-time administrative assistant, who handles all the paperwork, the documentation, communication a lot with the agencies, making sure everything's up to date on our paperwork side of things and all the clerical things. Chris Rietzman is a 40% part-time marketing manager, so we work very closely with him in our task and promoting our program. And lastly, Catherine Freemark, who is our contract homestay coordinator. I'll talk more about her and her role later on. I'll talk to her later on about that later on. In our schools as well, the support is in there. Within our 4 secondary schools, we do have 4 teacher coordinators, program coordinators, who work at our schools supporting students of the international program. And these 4 individuals are a huge asset to our program. We have Corianne Klassen at Star Secondary School, Kiana Olson at Imagine, Stephen Beal at GWG, and Ron at Chilliwack Secondary School. They are our front line at our schools. They are the ones who talk with students every day. They have meetings and they have events with the students. They get involved in the school. They'll change courses. They'll talk to their homestay coordinator. They're sort of the mom and dad at the school who without them, it'd be much more difficult to run a successful program. So they're a huge asset for us. And there are teachers in our school. Corianne teaches English, and she is an ELL teacher at Sardis, and Kiana is a counselor at Imagine. Ron teaches history and social studies at GW Graham, and Ron teaches Japanese at CSS, so huge asset to our team. So I guess a bit of an overview of where we are now, of our staff. So where are we now as far as enrollment numbers? So currently we have about 161 students, and that's broke down into different kinds of categories. So students will come from different experiences when they come to Chilliwack. It might be a semester, first or second semester. It might be a year-long program. They'll be here for 10 months. Or sometimes, not very often, we get some shorter-term programs. It might be 3 months, 2 months, and we try to accommodate that as well. So our total FTE is now 125.3. We are currently in the process of processing applications like crazy for next year. They come in every day, which is awesome. And being new to this department as well, right now we're doing a very deep dive into everything that's ISP. looking at every single process, every single paper, every single area of revision, opportunities, challenges, to improve and streamline our operations to make sure that we can be more effective and we can reach a broader range of students and bring more students to our city to enjoy Chilliwack. And I'll speak more to this in our 5-year plan shortly. So looking ahead, personally, it's always a tough thing for me to try to put the brakes on because you want to do so much. You want to try to improve things and change things and make changes quickly, but we have to do things at a pace that's sustainable. So that's really kind of the goal of our 5-year plan, is to make something sustainable while respecting the value of our program. We look to grow over the next 5 years to a larger program, but want to make that's something that's going to be sustainable, something that respects our values of making a hands-on program a very family feel. It's an easy thing to say to keep that, but it requires a lot of energy to make that environment for our program. And like I said earlier, we are competing against a lot of other great programs out there. We look to have an increase of about 10 FTE per year between 2023 and 2028. That's our goal. It's very hard, to be honest, to have a perfect number of, I expect to have X number of students come next year. It really comes down to how many conversations you have with agencies, how much recruitment is done, who are your contacts, but we try very hard to get to that. We're trying to reach about 180 FTE by 2028 in our 5-year goal. And that's going to include the long-term, the semester-long, and the short-term students. And another thing we have to look at all the time is also what's going on in the ISP world. In the Lower Mainland, if you think about Canada, British Columbia has probably the highest concentration of international programs in Canada. There are 2 major associations that exist in Canada for international education, both of them originated out of BC. So there's a lot of competition, so to speak, in British Columbia. So we have to keep an eye on what the trends are. What are tuitions looking like in our districts? What are homestay fees? What's the cost of living for our homestay families? So we can adjust tuitions and stipends for our families to make sure that we're still respecting values for everybody to be able to do our job. So another big piece of my job is recruiting and advertising. I try to attend as many events as possible. And there's different kinds of events one might attend as a international program administrator. There are some things called trade fairs, which is essentially you go to a large event and it's different agency shopping. So the best thing to compare it to is speed dating. So you'll have a booth, a table, the agencies will come around for about 20 minutes, half an hour meetings. You might see 15, 20 people a day, do that for a few days, and hope to make some contacts. There are also trade missions where they might take a X number of boards from Canada or British Columbia and move as a group around different parts of the world. For example, they might go to Mexico as a group and do like a trade fair for Mexican agents all together. So the key is, though, more events equals more agencies on your as a partners, which equals more kids. So it's a very big part of this system, of the process of international education, relationships, and also speaking to agencies. So where do we get the idea about where to go next? It's difficult to sort of predict what are the big next trends, but based on things you hear, rumblings in the, I don't know if you want to call it industry, but rumblings in the world about international education, things that are being said in publications, you start to think about where do you want to move next. Our programs have been very successful in Europe, with Germany, Spain, and Italy being our largest groups. Japan is also one of our larger groups of students, but we really haven't had a lot of luck of recruiting students from Brazil and Mexico. We have several Korean students who've come to BC, and that's because we haven't focused our energy there. There's a bit of what's interesting about this position is I've been an educator for 23 years, and that's my world. Every decision I make, every thought I have is based on what makes the most educational sense for students. But in the ISP world, there's this business thing that keeps talking on the side of your ear. There's a business there. You got to go. You got to do the right thing. So we have to branch out to different countries and start to promote our program there as well. In 24-25, I'd like to focus more on Vietnam, Thailand, and Turkey. Also, some markets are coming on the horizon. Trade fairs and missions, moving around the country, it is a very interesting job when you're away at those missions. You're doing meetings all day. You spend the evening doing all your Chilliwack work. You get up next morning, you do it again. You jump on a plane, you go to another event. So the glamour, it's not as glamorous as some people might think. Some of my friends say, "Oh, you must love, you're traveling a lot." It's like, yeah, it's fantastic. I won the lottery in my position. But it's not as glamorous as you might think, because there's a lot of work involved when we're out and about promoting. So when you're on the road, it's definitely long, hard days. But when you're doing something you love and you're promoting a community that you love as well, and Chilliwack is a very easy job to do. Very easy to do.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry,
course.
I feel like I've been interrupting you all night, but
Oh,
I
of
just
course.
be mindful of the time.
Yes,
I do
right,
want to give
okay.
trustees a couple minutes to ask questions if
Of
they want.
course.
So if you can
Okay.
like do the
Absolutely.
rapid.
We'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Absolutely. So we're going to expand our advertising and work on our current tools and try to expand more on our advertising front. Homestay opportunities, we are very good. One of the bottlenecks for a lot of international programs is homestays. There's not enough families to house their students. Luckily in Chilliwack, we're doing quite well, but we're mindful that that could change at any moment. So we're going to put a lot of energy into our homestay program, having our homestay coordinator out and speaking to families and events, trying to get more families to sign on to the international student program. And lastly, some other small things to work on in the next 5 years. We have a data management system, much like MyEd, called True North. It's a very similar kind of program that manages all our database side of things, maximizing tools to increase efficiencies in our program, automate processes, digitalize things, make things a lot easier for us to work through. Vital English, it's not, I said virtual there. Vital English is pre-assessment learning. Very unique program we're looking to as well. And last thing, try to give our students more chances to do some culture and field trip opportunities. And lastly, I'm working on a very comprehensive ISB policy manual. Those are things in our 5-year plan. So we're trying. Let's see where we get there. So any further questions, of course, we always got to throw our website up there, have a look. And I'm always available, and I'd love to hear any comments or questions you have.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear. Yeah, it's great to see a staff member so fired up about their positions.
Oh.
That's awesome.
No, I'm very fortunate.
I love it. Yeah. So trustees, I see Trustee Proce has a question. If you could push your button.
Yeah, just being new, I just want to understand, do these people come for the duration of 8 grades or for a couple of years?
Depends on the student. Some students may come for 1 year experience. So some students may come from September to June and be done, and they go back to the country. It depends where they're from. Some country students have a difficult time leaving and not getting behind their own schooling. So, for example, our Spanish students, they may come here for a year, and the courses they're taking here in Canada will count towards their graduation in Spain. But their transcripts need to be verified by the consulate, and they have to get permission to do so. Some students may do the same thing for 5 months of the school year. We have a lot of students, and it seems to be more from Japan and Korea and Vietnam, who are electing to stay a longer term, who might come here in grade 8, 9, and spend 3 years, 4 years to graduate here in Canada.
Trustee Bonder?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation, Paul. It was fantastic. And I also follow your social media channels. So those are awesome to see. I mean, it's just, as Trustee Richel said, it's just so awesome your passion comes through. I just have a question about the homestay families. Can families apply to host students if they do not have a student in their home, or how does that work?
That's a great question. And for us, it's very, we do a very vigorous screening process for our homestay families. There's criminal record checks. We want to make sure that families come to Canada know that they're going to be in a safe home. With families who are in it for wanting to give that kid that experience. One big thing, I understand the schooling piece for students. I understand the cultural piece as well. They want to come experience Canada families. So we are always looking for great families. Any family can apply. We have families who have small children. We have teachers. We have retirees. We have single family homes. All sorts of families who host our students. In the end, they're all great homes, and they give our kids great experience. We have families that take their students on vacation. Some students just came back from Hawaii. Others from Mexico. So I remember one homestay parent who came and saw me about a week or two after the student got here. He was like, "Oh my God, it's like she's part of our family. We love having her here." And those are the stories that you like to hear from homestay families. So yes, by all means. And if any of you know anybody who's looking for a homestay student, there's a website. No problem. You're welcome.
Trustee Moss.
So I'm just curious, what are the age ranges of the students? Like, what's the youngest student?
Great question. So we will take it. The international program is interesting in the fact that we've got students who come for that experience by themselves, that come here and stay with a homestay, and they will go to a high school or whatever. We don't provide a homestay program for students younger than grade 9, and you could, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do to have a student who's in grade 4 staying at a homestay from his family. It doesn't feel right. So our homestay program is for kids grades 9 and older. We do have students who are in kindergarten, who are in grade 3 and grade 5 in middle school. Typically those students have come here either with one of their parents or they are living with a family member. it kind of puts in an interesting scenario because, we have our international students part of the program. And we have fee-paying students that are, I guess, tied to the program without a homestay. But yeah, any age, but we have to make sure there's a very clear definition of on their homestay for them.
And I'm very happy to hear that. So that's a good scenario. So thank you.
We believe very strongly in that, yeah.
Trustee Sankey, go ahead.
Thanks so much. Huge thanks for the presentation. I really appreciated drawing attention to the values of the program, aligning with the values of the district, thinking, values of kindness, inclusion, collaboration, all being highlighted. The question I have, you have what sounds like a very modest approach to growth over the next 5 years. I'm wondering what the conversations around risk, if there is any associated with that plan, look like, and maybe risk management, if you can speak to any of those considerations.
So just to clarify, risk as in not reaching those goals, or?
More so, have you and your team articulated what are the risks with growth for the district and how those risks are being managed or mediated along the way?
I think we're taking a very mild, like a very progressive approach to growing, not too quickly, not too large too quickly. There needs to be a lot of conversations with our schools and understanding where they're at as well. This is why I try to have such a close relationship with our admin teams, knowing what are your needs. Are you finding that we're putting too many international kids, right? They might, try to avoid those stress in the system. So we are mindful of that as well. So I'm constantly having a very specific, when I have a new student register, I have a spreadsheet that says, okay, I have 3 students at CSS, 1 student at GWE, okay, there's 6 German students here, I better put that, because you want to have kids different languages as well, not to overload a school as well, but it's constant communication. I won't accept a student in a school without me knowing that there's space for them. Can we work through that? And just being mindful of that number, and as we grow to very larger numbers, I guess the biggest pressures for us might be more, maybe budgetary as we grow up. The time and the energy that needs to be put into a program with our staff is one thing that we definitely are very mindful of. We have grown to a great size, but we have a lot of capacity to grow larger. But there'll need to be a deeper dive into our operations, how we can support that. So does that help answer your question? I think. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had one question. Are we constrained by just facility size in our district, like that capacity?
I would say at this point, no. There's districts who are much smaller than ours who have much larger programs. There are districts who are much larger than ours who have massive programs. It's a conversation for me, and this is what I always tell my partner agencies and our admin teams is everything's conversation. If you say no, then no. If we can make it work, we'll make it work, right? So we are very mindful that we don't want to put too much stress in the system. But no, at this point, the only place that we might run into some scenarios with placements is we have students come that are less than grade 9, so our younger students, and just trying to find a school, like an elementary school or a secondary or middle school, where there might be space. We can make arrangements, right? We work very closely with our teams to see where it works. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions from trustees, so thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate you coming. All right, so I'm just going to wait till everything's off the screen there. So we are moving on to public participation. Now this portion of the agenda is open for public participation. This is questions or comments concerning the agenda. So only questions or comments concerning agenda items will be accepted. This participation period is about 15 minutes, and we try to keep each speaker to 2 minutes. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of people here tonight, so the shorter the better. And so when you come to the mic, you'll be asked to say your name and your connection to the district. Yes, and just push the button, the right-hand button.
So good evening, through the chair to the superintendents, trustees, educators, parents, and caregivers. My name is Patricia, and I'm here today as a parent and educator in our school system. I've worked as a youth care worker and an education assistant in the Fraser Valley for over 20 years. I'm concerned about the mental health of my students. I've advocated for the most vulnerable in our schools and society. I have been, and I am their frontline support person. My students have varying degrees of issues, whether it be neurodivergent students, students on various spectrums, students within the LGBTQI+ community, youth struggling with trauma, anxiety, depression, as well as marginalized, are just a few of the many vulnerable students I work with. It's quite extensive. I am concerned regarding some books and resources that our children are being exposed to that are potentially re-victimizing youth and children, especially our students who have experienced sexual trauma. Books I was reading and exposed to throughout my university education, which were intended for adults, are now in many of our elementary, middle, and high schools. Books written for 18+ should remain in university, college, and public libraries. I'm not here to suggest that any kind of books be taken or banned or anything like that. I'm just here as a concerned youth care worker who sees a lot of this is explicit in nature and are triggering some of our children and youth, and they should not be exposed to our children or youth, especially children not mentally and emotionally capable of the content. Are we not here to protect our young people? I'm concerned that they can further be damaged and to our already vulnerable children and youth. How are the policies going to address this and make sure that our most vulnerable aren't exposed to trauma-inducing material and that they are aligned with our criminal codes in Canada regarding sexual content regarding minors? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So press your button.
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry.
Thank you. So the trustees, you can keep those comments in mind when we're debating the learning resources policy. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That one? Okay. Hi, I'm a grandmother that has 10 grandchildren in this school district. I have two things that are on my mind here because
You just state your name for the record, please.
Teresa Gebink.
Thanks.
So I'll just go ahead and jump right in. One of them is a safety policy. I don't know if there is such a thing for overnight trips. My first concern is regarding an overnight field trip coming up in which there are students that identify as the opposite sex attending.
Sorry, just to interrupt, that's not on the agenda. We're speaking about items that are on the agenda.
Is it not a policy? I thought you were rewriting all the policies.
No, the agenda was posted online, so we're speaking about items that are on this agenda, so that
Okay.
is not one of them.
What about for violence and bullying in the schools? Is that something I can speak on?
That's not on this agenda either.
Okay. So basically, anything I wanted to say today is not going to, when can I
You
come
can
to speak
email the
about it?
trustees at any point.
I have
about your
emailed
issues.
you
Yeah.
and you responded,
Yeah.
but I didn't get the answers that I was hoping for.
Well, if you have further questions, you can write
because-
to the board.
There is a transgender child going on this field trip, but where is this child going to sleep? I know you can hear me.
I can hear you, but it's not getting broadcast because you're
It
saying
doesn't-
stuff that's
that's not- I
potentially
don't care if
discriminatory,
it's
so I'm not gonna
broadcast.
let you speak anymore. You can please take a seat. Those items are not on the agenda. Thank you. Press the right-hand button at the bottom.
Right-hand button. Okay, thank you. My name is Judy Sluice. I have grandchildren in the school system here. I've highlighted some items from the policy that's going to be presented tonight. Looking on page 68, 69, 70, the learning resources. One first thing I wanted to note is it says here the primary objective of learning resources is to support, enrich, and help implement the educational programs of the school. Now then on the next page, page 69, where it talks about selection of learning resources, it says they're selected the following social consideration principles. Now the principles A to F actually are not about the academic value of any of the curriculum. And I was just curious as to why, when it's talking about learning resources, the criteria has nothing to do with the academic. I find that very curious. Maybe there's an explanation to it, but I wondered why all of the diversity and the understanding and the ideology seems to be the first criteria. Now, quite often through here, it is using the phrase appropriate context Now, I'm wondering, appropriate according to whom? Because what one person says is appropriate, another person is not. So I'm wondering who is determining what is appropriate and what is not. What a teacher says is appropriate, a parent might not. What a parent says is, a teacher might not. Another, that whole agenda. So that's used quite often. It also uses the phrase professional judgment. And again, that leaves me questioning, okay, professional as opposed to what? Education is not a business. Education is a collaboration between community, educators, board, parents. So we all are professional in our own way. I raised 8 children. I'm a professional, guaranteed. So I wanted to know, what do they mean by professional? And are you excluding parental input by saying professional? Parents are pretty professional. Also says that...
Sorry, you've had 2 minutes, so I'll give you another
Okay, well,
30 seconds.
I'll just borrow somebody else's 2 minutes. So I'll flip through this quickly. It also says that, for instance, families who wish students to not read certain topics can have those discussions at home, but it's not the role of the TL to censor choices at a circulation desk. In other words, you can tell your kids what you think they should not pursue and what they should, and nobody's going to care what the child does. So there's no supervision. So to me, that leaves it wide open. Where is the accountability? Parents and caregivers have the right to request that children not have access to a given item provided a written
All right,
request is made.
that's been 30 seconds now, so that's your time. So you can have a seat and let someone else
Can I
talk.
not borrow somebody else's
No,
2 minutes?
no, you can sit down, please.
Because there's a lot of those kinds of
No, you can sit down,
questions
please. Thank you.
as to how these things are all
You've
defined.
been cut off now, so you can sit down, please. Thank you.
Right button, did I get it? Okay. My name is Shantini Clausen. I'm a parent in School District 33. And I had some questions and just kind of things I wanted to learn more about in the parental rights policy. I think it's absolutely crucial that parents understand their rights. And especially, I have younger kids in the system, and so a lot of people really it's very different than when I went to school. So one of the things I'm interested in, so I've read a little bit about it, what Trustee Moss has brought forth. I've read some other commentary on it. So one thing I would really like to know is which parts overlay with the bylaws and what is really specifically new. What's missing from that is something I'd really like to understand better. There are a couple of concerns I have that I'm hoping you can discuss and address in your discussion. My biggest concern is the right to access information regarding child's activities in school. I'm unclear what that means. Because as you know, a lot of teachers, obviously they're supervising children in the classroom, but there are so many other activities that are going on at school. And I'm wondering what the expectation of teachers is to supervise playground activities, supervise social activity, and how that would, affect their work and how it would also affect a child's privacy. So maybe I'm misreading that, but I'd like to learn a little bit more of that, because even children have the right to have privacy on the playground and have their own private, personal interactions with other children. The right to access to all resources, curricula. Of course, I believe parents have the right to access those things. My only concern is how that is interpreted, not because parents shouldn't be able to access them, but it's also not a teacher's responsibility to place their entire curriculum, forth for parents. And I think that the communication of that, I would really like that to be clear, so that both parents and teachers know what their responsibilities are when they want to access that kind of material. And then my final question/concern is the right to determine what subject matter is appropriate for their child. So of course, we all want our children accessing appropriate materials according to our own values, and I know that sometimes parents pull their, oh, am I done?
I'm done. I'm so sorry. In fairness to everyone.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm interested to hear what everyone has to
Thank
say,
you.
and I'd love to hear your
We'll keep
clarifications.
those in mind while we're debating. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to come up? Press the right hand button up there.
Is that good? Okay. All right, I'm Tanya Gaw, and this is regarding the learning resources. I'm just wondering, there's been a lot of controversy, of course, and a lot of concerned parents coming forth who aren't getting answers to their questions. And I know the board, through their association, the trustees have been told that they are, aside from not able to be, sorry, I'm not saying that right, indemnification. And they've been told under Section 94.1 that they're indemnified of the concerns regarding the criminal aspect of this. But if you go to Section 94, 2A and Section 4, it's very, very clear that the board can be held liable. And so there's a lot of concerns. You're all need to comply with the criminal code. And as I said, there's a lot of concerns about these materials being pornographic. It's been confirmed. This is not only in Canada, but around the world. And the board has an absolute duty to protect the hearts and minds of our children. So my question is, regarding the learning resources, have you considered the indemnification of you each personally have a duty to uphold the criminal code and according to the Teachers Act, Section 94, 2A and 4? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Press your button.
My name is Dr. Darrell Ferguson. Good to see you all. I have a question through the chair to the superintendent, if I may. And I would like to read, first of all, well, my question is going to be this. Is the superintendent aware of the sexually explicit books in School District 33? Do you know their content? And is School District 33 within their legal right to provide these materials? So my question is a legal question. What legal grounds does School District 33 stand on in regards to books with explicit sexual material? So this is not about the sexual preferences of any trustee on this board, because there seems to be a lot of diversity. So we celebrate diversity. But this is not about trustees. This is about legality. I just want to read briefly. Yes? It is. It's about learning resources. Thank you very much. Okay, and my question is to the superintendent. What legal stance has the superintendent taken in regards to the criminal code? Let me just briefly read. There are strict definitions of times it wasn't considered child pornography according to the Department of Justice.
So I'm turning off your mic, Dr. Ferguson. Yeah, we're not doing this. There's no illegal material in our schools that's highly defamatory. No, I'm not going to let you. Sorry. Too bad. No, it's not true. There is no illegal material in our schools. It is not a thing that is happening. So you can have a seat now. Thank you. You can come up. Thank you.
Simple question, and I didn't ask you specifically for a reason, because I knew your answer.
So
I'm asking the super, does the district have...
The superintendent is not chairing this meeting. This is a meeting of the board, and I've told you to sit down. Thank you.
Does the superintendent...
People can either obey the rules of order of this meeting, or you'll be asked to leave.
You're inappropriately silencing a question that's legitimate. What is the legal standing? That's all I ask, of the superintendent of the school district. Now, if you don't know it, you can't say we don't care. Does the superintendent understand the legal standing? That's all it is, in regards to materials.
None of what you're saying is on the public record, because I've turned off your mic, just so you know. Have a seat, Dr. Ferguson.
I love it.
Can you please ask Dr. Ferguson to leave if he will not sit down?
I will not leave, and I just want to finish my question.
This meeting is adjourned temporarily. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We are now on to action items 4.1, 2022-2023 amended annual budget revised, first reading. And the Secretary Treasurer will explain why this is the first reading again in her presentation. Thanks.
Oops, it's coming across a little big on the.
Oh, sorry, make it small.
Well, the second page is just looking a little big. So we find ourselves in a somewhat unusual situation where we submitted our original budget, what we call our preliminary budget, in June, on June 30, which is required by the ministry. And between June and December, the BC collective districts and main bargaining units got together and signed new labour agreements, and the effect of that was to increase salaries for the year that we'd already submitted a budget for. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for bits and pieces of that to settle, and in fact the ministry only just this week told us part of the additional revenue, so we don't have official notice from the ministry of the impact on revenue completely, and what they've advised us in this sort of unusual thing that happens very rarely, I think, after you've submitted a budget for one of your major variables to change, is that we shouldn't record any revenue, that we might expect as a result of the changes in the labour arrangements. So you'll see on this chart up here, we've actually removed the revenue. And they've also directed us to remove the additional cost for bargaining groups that have not been completely settled across the province yet. So the BCTF has actually settled across the province, which is why you see that we still have approximately $4 million in there, but the QP groups have not completely settled across the province. So as of the date of writing this report, we've reduced the expenditures that we expect for next year from 5.7 million to 4.2. This is just for presentation purposes for the province. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get 60 districts that have all the same underlying assumptions and add them together for presentation at the province, and that's what we need to do, is comply with the requirements that they've got. So everything else remains the same. When the province did review our statements, they picked up, I think, about $15,000 of grants that they wanted us to add in. Looking at Mark for a nod on that one. And you can see down the bottom that the revenues have decreased from 162 to 157 million. And the expenses from 162 to, I can't even read that now, 164. That's terrible. I actually cannot read that. Guess I need those new glasses that I've got the prescription for. I haven't filled. So the net result of that, of course, is a deficit that makes us look like we're in an awful financial position, a deficit of $5.2 million there. And if you go to the next page, you see the 162,744 there. So now we've got the revised expenditure number there, and we put that, I think, one more page in there.
That's fine.
Yep. And you'll see that $5 million deficit there. I wish I'd put a red circle around it now, but it's on the first row in the yellow, and there we go. Superintendent, exactly, right there. Fortunately, because we have some carry forward reserves from schools who are able to carry forward their budgets every year, and our a couple of other programs, we're actually able to cover it this year. It's just a presentation matter. I mean, if we hadn't been able to cover it, again, it's just presentation, and we're expecting some additional revenue to come from the province in any case. But at least we look like we're going to end the year in a surplus in this fantasy world that we're presenting. And just for informational purposes, we do quarterly reports, and we will be using what we believe to be the real numbers for those comparison purposes, because that helps us gauge whether, how we're performing against where we expect to be. This is not really a good comparison point at this point.
So just to clarify, I think just for members of the public, since this is a budget thing again, and then also to remind trustees, basically, once the QP agreement is signed, we will be going back to the version of the budget that was presented last time that we did first reading for.
Yes.
And then everything will go back to normal, but temporarily we have to do this because it makes the government's books balance, essentially, correct?
Correct.
So other than $12,000 in grants that you were mentioning, it's the
Yeah.
same budget that we saw last time, but with this.
Presentation
Okay,
adjustment,
okay,
yes.
thank you.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Trustees, any questions? Trustee Moss.
So I would like to make the motion, but I would also like to propose that we do 3 readings of this budget. As we've already, the budget committee's looked at it twice, the board's seen it twice, we know what's what, and if we do all 3 readings tonight, then we can allow staff to move ahead with the new budget upcoming.
So trustee Moss would like to move that we do all 3 readings in one night. If we have a seconder for that, that motion has to, okay, seconded by trustee Procey. So just for everyone's knowledge, in order to do all 3 readings in one night, that vote needs to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, we can only do 1 or 2 readings in one night, and we'll have to do the next reading at the next, another time. And that's fine. So if you have any reservations and you don't want to do them all in one night, like this, there's no pressure, but that is just the rules. So it has to be unanimous in order to do all 3 readings in one night. Okay? So I believe we'll just go straight to the vote on that. So all those in favor of doing all 3 readings tonight? Opposed? Okay, so we won't be doing all 3 readings. So I believe we could do, honestly, since we can't do all 3 readings in one night, I think we should just do first reading tonight, and then but to be aware, we'll have to either do all 3 readings, or the next 2 at the next meeting, or have another meeting, because this has to be done by the end of February. That's fine, though. We're not doing all 3 in one night. So, trustee Moss, if you want to do the motion now, that'd be fine.
Sure, I'll do the motion, but I also think it's important to add that the deadline for this budget, for the amended budget, is February 28th. So
Yes,
the clock is
absolutely.
ticking, and
We have, you'll notice
Yeah.
in the schedule of board meetings, which is our next motion, we're planning to add a meeting before that date for the purposes of second and third reading of the budget. So that won't be a problem, but thank you for calling it to our attention for sure. Would you like to do the motion for the budget? Sorry, can you push your button?
put my back to it, that the Board of Education approve the first reading of the revised 2022-23 amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $199,749,488.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Moss, can you press your button? Nope. We probably don't need a bunch of discussion on this. Is there anybody who wants to say anything about first reading of this? Okay. All those in favor of passing first reading of the amended annual budget? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, we are moving on to 4.2, schedule of board meetings 2022-2023, revised.
Thank you, Board Chair. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We need to have another meeting in the month of February, so we've actually amended the board meeting schedule. We're going to go from 11 public meetings to 12, and the recommendation is in front of you.
Does anyone want to make this motion? Trustee Swanky?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. I would move that the Board of Education approve the revised 2022-2023 school year Board of Education meeting and learning session calendar as attached.
Seconded by trustee Bond. Does anyone want to speak to this? I did want to just point out one thing for just everyone's understanding. Had we not done this, we could have still called a special meeting for the budget, but if in special meetings, according to bylaw, you can only have 1 agenda item. So it's not very useful. By amending the schedule allows us to have a full, proper public meeting, an extra one. So that's why we're doing it this way. Okay, all those in favor of, trustee Moss.
Oh, well, I was just gonna ask, so the reason is because we have our our board meeting agendas or not board meeting agendas, but we have our board meetings processes in a bylaw. And so because we have it in a bylaw, 20 pages in our package in order to add a meeting. It's easy, they said. 20 pages later. Anyway, okay.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving the revised 2022-2023 meeting schedule to add an extra meeting in February? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustee. Okay, now we're on to 4.3, bylaw 5, board meeting procedures, revised. Simone, do you want, or sorry, Secretary Treasurer, do you want to speak to why we're doing this?
I didn't pull it up on my screen in the intro. Isn't that terrible? So, over the course of time, the way you run meetings evolves. And one of the things that we've noticed is, and thank you to various trustees for pointing this out, is that items that impact the agenda, that impact discussions, are often happening after the item has been voted on. So the purpose of this adjustment to the bylaw is to adjust for that, to correct for that, to bring the agenda into a more flowing order. While we were at it, we had a look at Robert's Rules of Order and just made sure we were aligned with that. And I think that's what you see in front of you.
Does anybody want to make the motion? Trustee Moss?
That the Board of Education, whoops, I'm on the wrong page. I'm on the wrong page.
We're not on
Where
the
am I?
right. Oh, yeah, we are, yes. We are.
Okay, that the board approve 3 readings of bylaw 5, board meeting procedures revised.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, that's the motion to do all 3 readings of the bylaw because it's a bylaw. I highly recommend, I shouldn't say that. If we do it, there's no real reason to do this over 3 readings because it's a very simple change. But, if someone is like, I must take a look at this again, we can just do 1 or 2 readings tonight. So is there a seconder for doing all 3 readings? Trustee Bongar. Secretary Treasurer, did you have something to say?
Yeah, just to add, I should have said, when I introduced it, that the reason that we recommended 3 readings for this was because we want to correct this. We want the board to be getting things in the right order, and the sooner we get this through, the sooner we can have that corrected.
All right, all those in favor of doing all 3 readings of the revisions to bylaw 5 this evening? So indicate. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, trustees. Okay, so now we need someone to actually make the motion that we're... Trustee Westerby.
I motion that the board approve the first, second, and third readings of bylaw 5, board meeting procedures.
Seconded by trustee Swain. Anybody want to speak to this motion?
Sure, I'll speak briefly. Our meetings intentionally are efficient, effective, and informed. That's the goal. So I appreciate the fresh look of staff at structuring our meetings for that. And of course, we can always come back and have another fresh look if there's things that members of the board feel should be adjusted further.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Okay, I just wanted to quickly say that one of the things that this does as well is puts public participation after all of the information, but before the action items. So it also gives the members of the public who come and watch the meetings diligently, like so many of you come to regularly, it allows you to actually have the information before you're asking questions, because the way we had it before, the first thing is public participation before you've seen any of the stuff, which is kind of awkward and often there aren't questions. So this will give you more information before you do that. So I'm in favor of this change. Okay, seeing no further questions, all those in favor of approving first, second, and third reading of bylaw 5, board meeting procedures as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, trustees. Okay, so now we're on to number 4.4, policy renovation project, business and support services, section 600. And this is 4.4.1, policy 620, signing authorities, and this is revised. So we just recently do this one, but this is a revision requested after the Secretary Treasurer has had a look at it. So I will let her speak to that.
All right, I have this one in my head. I got to the point of implementing this a couple of weeks ago and realized that we could clean it up a little bit more, and the 2 principal cleanup items were how many signatures were required and for what. I think inadvertently required 2 signatures, and there were only 3 signatories, and it was probably a little bit of overkill. And then the corporate seal, we did a little bit of extra research and found out exactly when that should be used, and the policy was probably reaching a little further than it needed to. So we've cleaned those couple things up.
Does anybody have questions about this before we do the motion? Seeing none, does anyone want to make this motion? Trustee Moss.
That the Board of Education approve revised policy 620, signing authorities as attached.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Swanky, thank you. Does anyone want to speak to the motion? Trustee Moss, can you push it back? Does anybody want to speak? Okay, seeing no one, all those in favor of approving policy renovation, or policy 620, signing authorities revised as attached? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to 4.5.1, policy 382, library learning commons.
Thank you, Chair. So this is part of the ongoing work around the revised policy manual. This is the 300 series. This was brought forward to the Education Policy Advisory Committee. This actually was completed last year. I'm just going to throw this over to Trustee Swanky, who is the chair of the committee, to provide some context.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. I'll draw your attention all the way back to May 30th of last school year when the Policy Advisory Committee convened. I think there was, I forget if it was 2 or 3 meetings, but there was revisions and input received from all partners as reflected in Policy 161. Any changes or revisions in the proposed policy were done by consensus, and it was referred with unanimous consent of the members. So there was no concerns or dissenting voices within the proposed policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions before we put the motion on the table? All right, would someone like to make the motion? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Mata.
I will move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 382, library learning commons, as presented.
A seconder? Trustee Swanky seconds. Would you like to?
I would not.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Trustee Moss.
Thank you. Well, I think the first paragraph is perfect, and I think the rest is a lot of politically correct verbiage, and I wish that this policy stopped at the first paragraph because I think that's exactly what it is, to enhance critical thinking, creativity, and communication. And so some of this to providing an appropriate context for complex issues, all the while highlighting the importance of having an awareness of personal bias. I'm not even sure what that means. And dynamic programming in order to foster innovative and inclusive opportunities. I'm not sure what that entails either. So I'm not going to bother making an amendment to remove the last 2 paragraphs because I know that this board will not have the will to go along with it, but I just wanted to speak to this policy. Thank you.
I also sit on the Education Policy Advisory Committee with Trustee Swanky and was on it as does Trustee Westerby now, but he was not on it way back in May, way back in the good old days when we discussed this policy. But I just wanted to point out that it was a much, much shorter, more concise policy before, just basically a couple sentences. You can see that in the revisions that are included in the package. And the consensus of EPAC was that it needed to be more more of a philosophical statement about what the purpose of libraries and library learning commons is. So that was with much discussion from all partner groups present at EPAC. So that's why we have the policy that is before you now. So I'm supportive of EPAC's work. And thank you to all the EPAC members, by the way, for all the work you do always at our meetings. Seeing no other questions or comments from trustees, all those in favor of approving policy 382, library learning commons as presented? Opposed? Did you catch that? Oh, no, trustee Prose and trustee Moss, yes. Okay, thank you, trustees, that is carried. Now we're moving on to policy 380, learning resources.
Thank you, Board Chair. So I'll provide some context. This policy was brought forth for this start of the school year. We had two meetings at EPAC. One was on December 13th, one was on January 23rd, and that was the completion of the policy work. Before I provide any further context, I'm going to ask Trustee Swanky as the chair of the committee to provide some information.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. As you can see, this was worked on much more recently. Again, all partner groups were represented within the composition of the committee as reflected both in Policy 161 and in the meeting minutes. Any changes, any input was done by consensus of the committee. And again, the policy was referred by unanimous consent without any concern or dissenting voices from the partners represented at the policy working table. The only thing I would add is what was already mentioned by Chair Reichelt. Our appreciation to members of the committee who volunteered their time and the many tens of hours to get it to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Swanky. Just a couple of quick pieces around. Really need to focus on, there was information from the Minister of Education last year. As you may or may not know, the Minister of Education is revising its learning resources policy. It will come out right after spring break. The Minister was really clear that any new learning resources policies would require to be able to have social consideration principles. I'll read them out for you. Promote diversity and human rights, incorporate diverse racial backgrounds and lived experiences, demonstrate equity and reflect First Nations and BIPOC voices, ensure that resources present a balancing perspective, provide appropriate context for complex issues, and highlight the importance of having an awareness of personal bias, ensure opportunities for critical thinking are emphasize the importance of reviewing resources with fresh eyes to ensure resources do not contain outdated or offensive content. So that was sort of a consideration from the Ministry of Education that has been taken into consideration in revamping this policy. Last but not least, this is a combination of two policies. As you can see, it is a combination of learning resources policy and also the challenge of learning resources policy collectively combined into one. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that background, Trustee Swanky and Superintendent. Would someone like to make the motion? Trustee Swanky, did you want to do it? Yeah, I saw your eyes light up.
Certainly. I'm happy to move that the Board of Education reaffirm Policy 380, Learning Resources, previously 601, Learning Resources, and 606, Challenges to the Use of Learning Resources, as presented. The policy was presented to the Education Policy Advisory Committee in its draft form at its December 13th, 2022 and January 23rd, 2023 meetings.
Do you have a seconder? Trustee Reed. It's a challenge. Okay. Would you like to speak at all, Trustee Swanky? I know you already did, but did you want to speak first before anyone, since you moved it?
I guess I just reiterate and highlight the consensus of the table. I think that this brought together all partners that are identified within board policy, and including parents, including students, including staff within the district. And so there was broad consensus that this is going to support the work of the board and of the district going forward.
Does anyone else want to speak before we call the question? Trustees Prose.
Yeah, so my question, just in hearing the public speak about some of these concerns, it says in here, in one section, it says, ensure resources are current and do not contain offensive or stereotypical content. So is that, can the parents be assured that that would be upheld in the school system, and how can they know, and how can they, like, their concerns be met? And would that be considered? I'm assuming that this is allowing them to be aware of that.
Yeah,
situation.
so I can speak to that a little bit. So we did talk about that at the table. So, you know, teachers and teacher librarians have to do something called weeding, where they take things out of their collections. You don't just buy something and then never look at it again. You sort of go through your collections, especially on certain topics, like, for example, Indigenous peoples. There's some of the resources that would have been in schools when we were in school are not appropriate anymore. And so the idea is that those should be really removed from the shelves, but sometimes something goes awry and it's just no one noticed and it's still on the shelf. If someone finds a book, they just tell the teacher librarian or tell the teacher and say, hey, did you know this is still around? In almost all cases, if it really is outdated, it would just be removed from the shelf. If it doesn't get removed for some reason and the parent wants to challenge, there's a policy for challenging learning resources, which is referenced in the policy.
One follow-up question, please. In some of the content that the public brought up had to deal with more of the sexually explicit material. Is that considered part of the contain offensive or stereotypical content? Would that be something that motion or this resource would also address?
Superintendent, can you speak to that?
Thank you for the question. What I'm going to say is, at the end of the day, parents are partners, and I think if you look at the very last section of the policy, every parent is able to have a conversation with their classroom teacher or their school principal, and if they have considerations regarding the policy, there's a process for them to challenge their learning resource, and I think that's what's really important about the policy. It is transparent, it provides opportunity for conversations, and it's an ongoing conversation by itself. So I think that would probably address your consideration.
Sorry.
Trustee Reed?
Is it on now? Okay, I was pressing the wrong button. That's why it wouldn't second it. I just wanted to speak to the motion because I have spoken to a lot of parents, and I have spoken with parents that have concerns on both sides. And I think that in the past, some of the policy maybe wasn't a little as clear on how somebody could challenge something. Like, I don't necessarily need to agree with the challenge, but there needs to be a clear process that as a trustee I can walk somebody through and I can point them to it. So I think I am comfortable, and I feel a lot of parents are very comfortable with the changes that have been made. I would like to see maybe an increase in public education on what that process is, so that parents do know it is available and that, you know, we're available for them as well.
Trustee Moss?
Thank you. So I actually tried to bring this policy to the board 4 times in the last few months of the last board, because I actually do believe that this policy is one that the board needs to deal with, because it is controversial because of the materials that are in the schools, which we've heard about. So I'm just going to. Back in 2005, this was the learning resources policy. It's 1 paragraph, maybe 2 sentences. And now I don't even know how many pages this one is now. It's got a lot of verbiage to it. But this one was written pre-legislated order, the new legislated order that came from the Ministry of Education, directing boards to approve learning resources. Now, obviously, boards are not going to approve all the learning resources, but there are certainly cases where there is controversy and the board needs to set parameters. Just like a movie you go to, it says strong language, alcohol, smoking, sexual content. That's a warning. And we have nothing in this policy that gives a set of parameters to dictate what needs to be in this policy, so that parents can be confident that their children are going to go to school and they're not going to be exposed to books that we already know, we've heard about, gender queer, all boys aren't blue. All these books are objectionable and they are controversial. And so I would strongly urge this board to not pass this policy. The legislated order also states, there's a number of points, and it states that the board considers education resource materials that the board considers appropriate. That the board considers appropriate, not the committee, not the teachers union, not CUPE, not DPAC, but the board. That is our job. That is what we're elected to do. So that would be my recommendation, that this board not pass this policy as stands to protect children.
Trustee Prose, I will let you speak again, but Trustee Westerby and others have not spoken yet, so
Oh, sorry.
needs to
No.
speak once. Yeah, no problem. Trustee Westerby?
Thank you. I just want to speak in favor of this resource policy, as this is our way of directing, the board is directing curriculum this way. And in particular, this policy outlines that our teachers and teacher librarians are professionals, and they know how to make appropriate decisions about what books are there. And according to the ministry's expectations of us, we have to make sure that our resources are equitable and that they teach about everything that the superintendent had listed. So that's why there's so much detail in this, to ensure that we have a full guide of how our policies, of how our resources are selected in the district.
Trustee Prose, I'm going to speak first because I haven't spoken yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that this policy is really important, and I think it's very well written the way it is. I think it emphasizes the right things for our district. I think that it, especially what I like is that it talks about the Focused Education Resource Committee, which is a provincial committee that's made up of education professionals who actually look at not every book in the world, but honestly, most of the books that are in our library will have gone through that process, and they will say exactly what grade level they're appropriate for. And there is sex in the world, and there is sex in people's lives, and if you are a teenager, there's going to be some sexual content in your books, and I think that trying to ban all such content is just illogical. And I think that there are some people in our community that don't want any of that in schools, and it's by the time you're 16, you have questions, and to find it in a format that is for your age group and not going to the library and just getting adult books or going to the internet and looking at porn is a lot more preferable. And so I think that when we leave this in the hand of our education professionals who know children, they know how to teach, they know the kind of things that their kids need to know about, and they are following our BC curriculum, I think that this strikes the right balance. And then if they have chosen some resource, they made some wild decision, and a parent really wants to challenge that, there is a policy for that. So I think that it strikes the right balance, and it puts education in the hands of education professionals, which is where it should be. Thanks. Trustee Prose.
Yeah, just to segue on Margaret's comment, I appreciated that, Margaret, on, so with, I recognize the professionalism of the educators, et cetera, but we still have the reality of parents, and parents are messy, we all know. So is there a way we can incorporate parent in, is there a clear indication of parents just to be aware? Like, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to, have a fire, but is there a way that parents can be informed of what's going on, or is there a way for them to know these things? Is there a way for them to connect with the school board or through the curriculum?
Are you talking about what's happening in classrooms?
No, I'm not really. I'm just asking, is there, like Margaret mentioned, is there a way of just having parents have access to sort of what's going on with their in their school, their curriculums and stuff like that? Like, is there a possibility to have more of that on a webpage, or is that just?
Perhaps the superintendent can speak to how parents are kept informed of their kids'
Yeah, like
education.
where would we include the parents in this discussion? Because I think that's an important part of an education system, is that the parents are included in the discussion. I guess that's my point. But how can we do that in a very simple and yet honorable way, so that they don't feel that they're left out of the conversation?
Thank you. I think I heard the question correctly. There's two parts to this question. The first part is the redesigned curriculum. There's ongoing conversations between the classroom teacher and the parents through communication of student learning, and that information is online, public, that parents can access and ask questions about when they connect with their classroom teacher. I think you might be referencing materials in maybe perhaps in the Learning Commons library. And part of that process maybe is that if there was a resource that the parent found out about, and they had questions about, they connect back with the classroom teacher, and or if they're really concerned, there's a process to go back and ask questions about that. So I think at the end of all of this is that we need to have a transparent, consistent process for parents to access information and to connect with classroom teachers and as well as school officials.
Thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Moss?
Thank you. So I just want to note that the books that I mentioned and many of the other books. I searched them on the FER and the ERAC site, and they are not approved resources. They're not. Every search I did came up, this book was not found. So those books that are controversial are not preferred books by this group either. I also want to mention that the whole challenging process, I walked with a parent in the last term through the whole process when this parent challenged a resource, and it was a very onerous, long process. And it is difficult for parents to negotiate that. But right now I want to ask the question, so is there a line that we won't cross? Do we have a line? There's no mention of the Criminal Code of Canada, which we have heard from parents who got up to the
Trustee Moss, I'm just going to interrupt you there. There's no material in our classrooms.
point of privilege. Chair, would you let me finish
No,
my?
I'm not, because I'm going to interrupt you and tell you that there are no materials in our
Point of privilege.
schools that break the criminal code and that are illegal.
Point of privilege.
You're calling point of privilege. I'm the chair. I'm denying your privilege.
Well, if you would like to let me continue,
Well,
I would
wouldn't
appreciate
like
that.
to, actually. So are you going to stop
Thank you.
saying that there's stuff that's
So
against
I'm
the
going
criminal
to
code?
read the criminal code to you, and then you can judge.
I've cut your mic. So does anybody else wish to speak to this motion?
So you're not going to let me read?
No, I'm not. So, would anyone else like to speak? Seeing all those in favor of passing policy 380, learning resources as presented? Opposed? Thank you. Oops. It's the timer for speakers, thanks. That passes. Motion carried. All right, moving on to policy, number 4.6, policy for parents, guardians' rights. Just before we get to the motion, I just wanted to pass it to the superintendent for a bit of background before we go to Trustee Moss, who wants to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to provide some context and then in preparation for this particular policy. So, give me a quick second here. So what I did a quick scan around legislation, also the School Act, and I think part of the conversation has been is when we started the policy manual analysis was around the fact that was a duplication in our school policies as in reference to School Act, ministerial policies and regulations, and that was part of the conversation prior to. So just really did a quick scan. So parents' entitlement and responsibilities is in Section 7 of the School Act. Section 9 of the School Act covers the rights and responsibilities of examination of school records. Section 11 talks about the appeal process for parents to engage if they want to have a conversation about a decision made by an employee, as well as the BC government prescribes the curriculum presented to students in line with the Ministerial Order 333-99, as well as the new reporting order clearly articulates the idea about using proficiency scales from grades K to 9, as well as letter grades and percentage of grades 10 to 12. So that's a sort of a short list. And so at the end of the day, if things are in legislation, talking about the School Act, policies, ministerial policies and regulations, the intent will be not to duplicate, but instead point to those particular pieces of legislation or policies, and policies do actually change by itself, and so that's sort of the intent. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent. Trustee Moss, you were wanting to move this motion.
Yes, thank you. Do we have it up there? Oh, yeah. That the Board of Education write a parental/guardian rights policy.
Do you have a seconder for this motion? Trustee Prose. Go ahead, Trustee Moss.
Thank you. Actually, I think our our previous conversation was actually a perfect segue into why a policy like this is necessary. And I'm certainly not ascertaining that all of these points, these rights, where I've said included but not limited to, that they don't already have these rights, because they actually do. But what I'm saying is what we need is a one-stop shopping spot for parents to see, oh, yes, I can go and I can ask for that. Oh, yes, okay, well, I can talk to my teacher. And then contained in the regulations, we would have all the where to find it and how to go about doing it. A lot of parents are deer in the headlights when it comes to, it's a scary process to challenge a book or to go and ask for this information when there is pushback. And so parents need to know that, hey, I can do this. I can go and I can ask for these things. I previously had a conversation with the DPAC chair and member at large, and we kind of went through it, and I provided my rationale for including these points in this draft policy. And they were willing to go back to the parents afterwards and see if the parents were wanting to have a policy like this. So really and truly, I mean, you know, there's so many situations where it's easy. It would be easy to do this. So the right to determine what subject matter is appropriate for their child. There's a teacher at GW Graham who sends out her, excuse me, I'm not giving any names and I'm not saying anything bad. Allow me to continue, thank you. Who at the beginning of the term sends out a syllabus of books that will be read, and if there are any that are controversial, they are starred and an alternative is provided. What's hard about that? That's working together with parents, and it's respectful, and everybody's happy. The right to homeschool. We recently removed our homeschooling policy, and so this just puts it back front and center so parents know if they want to homeschool, they can, and the district will help them. So all this is a means to an end for parents. Parents are the clients. We serve the parents. Without parents, we're not here. None of us are here. And parents, as Mr. Mackestalker used to say when he was at Sarda Secondary, he said, you know, parents send the very best students and the most precious they have to school. And it's incumbent upon us to look after them and to take good care of them. And so that's why I wanted this board to have the conversation about drafting a policy like this, so that parents are able to find their rights and responsibilities in one spot. So.
Trustee Procey.
So I think the reason why I voted against the EPAC was not because of the work they did. I think there was a lot of good things in there. I want to clarify that to make sure there's no misunderstanding. I just think that the marrying up of the parental rights with the EPAC, and I would love to see the EPAC if they would include the parental rights within the context of it, like maybe you have to rewrite it, but that would be important so that there's a balance between the educators and the parents. And I think that's a really good perspective to have in our education system. I realize that it can get messy sometimes, but it's still important for voices to be heard. So it really encourage the EPAC to create a policy, or take Heather's policy and maybe juggle it a little bit, whatever they think it would need, and that'd be nice to see it combined as a one unit thing. And I think it would be really beneficial for all peoples involved. Thank you.
You read?
Yeah, so I'm a parent, and I have to, I empathize a lot with everything that Trustee Moss says. It is scary. It can be very scary. And I've spoken with a lot of parents since I read the motion, and I think that there is a little bit of a disconnect sometimes, and there is room for a lot of education and transparency. Notes here, because parents and caregivers really want to know their rights, and we want to make them aware of their rights. I completely agree, and I know that we are renovating policies, and as those things happen, it's really hard to stay on top of that. It's hard to read what's changed, know what's changed, how it applies to you. I don't think a policy is the right way to approach it. just for housekeeping reasons mostly, but I do think that it is a conversation that we should have about how we educate parents and how we make it transparent and easy and available to everybody.
Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. Both the notice of motion and the rationale for how this was brought forward drew attention to previous policy 902 volunteering, which was referred by this board and by motion of the board at the December 6th meeting to the Education Policy Advisory Committee. That committee is currently under work on policy that would relate to this subject matter. I'd therefore ask, given that they're taking direction from the board, they've already invested a significant amount of time, committee volunteer hours and staff hours. So I therefore move that we lay on the table the motion before us and bring it back at a later time once the committee has done their work. I move that we lay the motion on the table.
Okay, trustees, so we don't see this motion very often, so a motion to lay on the table means that the motion is basically put aside and then would come back later on at another date. It requires a seconder to lay on the table, but it doesn't, okay. So trustee Prose has seconded. It's not debatable though. So if you vote yes to this, it means we are stopping debate on this motion tonight and it will come back in its current form to be debated at another date. If you vote no to the motion to table, we'll carry on debate and finish discussing this policy tonight. So that's what we're voting on right now. There's no debate. All those in favor of tabling policy for parent guardian rights? All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, that doesn't carry. Thank you for your consideration, trustee Swanky. Did you catch who that was? Okay. Trustee Bonder, did you want to speak?
I could.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that several important points have come up this evening already with respect to this policy. We have significant levels of parental involvement in policies that exist, both with EPAC, the School Act, and many of the reporting procedures that we go through. Parents are also welcome and open to contacting their school teachers, their principals at any time. I've also heard from one of the commenters this evening the question that teachers and professionals in the classrooms have work to do in those classrooms and may not always have the time or space to receive parental concerns. And I think that that's fair. They have a job to do while they're there. So for all of these reasons, I find this policy proposal to be redundant to many of the current structures that are already in place. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby?
I actually echo a lot of what Trustee Reed and Trustee Moss was saying about parents' access to what is in front of them, what policies already exist. I myself have had several parents come to me asking for guidance on how to process some things that are going on in their schools, and because I have some really good ins and outs of the policies, I was able to guide them through. I agree. I think a lot of this is redundant as a policy, and I think that what I actually have a question to staff, the chair, is how could we create a transparency publication for parents to be able to guide them through their existing rights? Because I believe that, if my understanding is what Trustee Moss is actually asking for, is a parents' rights access kit. And I don't think policy is the best place for it because of the redundancy amongst many of the levels of policy. But I would absolutely love to see more transparency and communication to parents in the district. Thank you.
I'm going to speak to this policy. I feel that I echo what Trustee Bondar was saying, that I do think it's redundant. Almost every policy that's come through EPAC has referenced parents, guardians, caregivers. I don't think that we need a separate parents' rights policy. I've heard some comments about making it more accessible to parents, so I'm wondering, and maybe if we ever get a communications manager, some sort of pamphlet that could almost be handed out to parents, like a one-pager to explain, like, this is how to navigate the policy document, because it is actually kind of big and a little bit maybe inaccessible, so I think that might be helpful. I do think, parents are very, very important. I'm a parent, I had 2 kids who went through the public school system, but to me, my philosophy is not that parents are the most important people in our school system, it's that children are the most important people in our school system. And I think that some of the things in this particular policy I find very, very troubling. I think that especially the requirement of schools to report back to parents on some of their students' activities. There could be a lot of situations where a child is not safe to tell their parents maybe some of the things that are going on at school, especially a queer kid who was in a family, for example, with homophobic parents. And then they've come out at school and they're living their best life and they don't want to tell their parents. And that's really valid. And I think that a policy that would basically enshrine that schools have to disclose would go against that child's rights. And I would always put children's rights ahead of parents' rights. So although parents' rights are important, and I do think parents need to know how to help their children, because most parents are their children's best advocate, right? I mean, most parents are, but that's not always the case, and I think we have to be aware of both things. And so enshrining parents' rights at the expense of children's rights is the wrong way to go, in my opinion. Thanks. Does anyone else want to speak to the policy? Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of the points, I would echo several of them. I think the piece that I would add, it's been mentioned that the absence of a connection and communication plan, that's separate from any of this. A policy is not a communication plan. A policy is not a relationship builder, and it doesn't help inform discussions and build trust in schools. Relationships do. So I say that saying I will oppose this policy. I think it would have been more in order to put this discussion off. But I think it's the relationships that ultimately are about trust in schools, not any policy that won't change the fact that maybe there's trust that needs to be repaired in some instances and trust that just needs to be continued to be fostered within our school community. So I speak again against the proposed policy, and thank you.
All right. Okay, Trustee Prose.
Could I ask clarification what you mean by relationship, and what does that look like?
Feel free to answer, Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. I think that if you're looking for where, I don't need a parent to have trust in me. I hope that they do. I hope that parents trust me, but more importantly, they need to trust the teachers working with their child every day. They need to trust the administrators, the EAs, everybody inside that school community. So those relationships, in my view, Chair, speaking through the Chair, of course, that is the important piece. And so a relationship, or pardon me, a policy, and I'm speaking to it, please call me out of order if I am Chair, but a policy outlining the rights without talking about the responsibilities and all the other pieces within a school community that are a piece of that trust does not help ensure that we have a relationships informed by trust within our school communities.
Thank you. I think we're just about ready to vote. It looks like everyone's had a chance to see. Oh, Trustee Maz, you'd like to close out? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So parents' trust, that's after hearing some of the comments, I'm very concerned about the fact of parents' trust if people are making judgment calls about parenting their children around gender issues, which is another reason that this policy really needs to be enshrined. We received an email today with a beautiful set of circumstances and outlines of all the places and reasons why this policy would work from the teachers union this morning. And I said thank you for the policy that, or the email that was sent to us, because it actually does outline. Am I still on?
I'm interrupting, point of clarity, that's misrepresenting what the teachers submitted in a pretty severe way. So I don't think that's very respectful to the CTA who was present in the room.
Okay, let me reword it then. So the CTA sent an email to us opposing my parental rights policy.
That's much more honest.
Thank you. And this was sent this morning. So they actually have debated this policy with this board before the board even had a chance to discuss the board at the table, which I believe is actually quite unethical. Anyway,
that's enough. Okay, so thank you very, very much to the CTA for sending your feedback before the board meeting, and I encourage all partner groups, QP, DPAC, to do that, because it really helps the board when we can see stuff in advance and we can think about it before we come to the meeting, because your 2 minutes at the mic is not very sufficient for us to make good decisions. So thank you so much for that. We won't always listen, or sorry, we'll always listen. We won't always do what you say, but it's very, very important to us to have that time to think. And I would thank trustees to not disparage partner groups in public meetings. Thank you very much.
I did not disparage the CTA. I merely made a statement about.
Thank you. All right, so all those in favor of approving the policy for parents' guardians' rights as presented? Opposed? Motion fails. Okay, moving on to information items. 5.1, Student and Family Affordability Fund update. Superintendent?
This is over to the Assistant Secretary Treasurer.
First time today.
Great, thank you. I stole the.
Sorry, I messed it up. Let's move on.
Okay, I'm here now. So thank you very much. I recognize, looking back at my notes, that the last time we presented on this Family Affordability Fund was with the previous board just before the election. So I recognize that some of the new trustees may not be up to speed with what this is about, although you might have heard it through various communications. So the Family Affordability Fund was something the provincial government, the ministry, provided near the end of August last year to help with the rising costs of living, and in the hopes that it would help support families back to school with food security and other school supplies assistance. Our district was given $1.5 million of this funding, and in October we presented some of the initial initiatives that we came up with after consultations with our partner groups. And on the second page of the information report, you can see a status update of those initiatives and the spending year to date. I just want to make a few other points. So again, this focus of this fund is really on food security and family assistance. Now, we know there's many needs in our community beyond this, transportation and other things, and unfortunately, we have to stay focused on these two things right now. And I'm blessed and privileged to be a part of this, to be able to help families. Having said that, I think it's challenging for us as school district employees to manage this sort of fund, because it's not really in our bailiwick. We're not a nonprofit in the sense that our mandate is serving the needs of the community in this way, although we do it more and more indirectly through food programs, and our schools really share a heavy burden in that. So to date, we've allocated out close to $1 million of this funding, and we've spent about $420,000 of that. Again, that comes with challenges of finding the real needs of where we can make the most bang for this buck effectively. We want to take a prudent approach to finding the needs, and we have initially we have a deadline of June 30th to spend this money, but having talked to many other districts, a lot of districts are in the same boat, being challenged by, being overwhelmed by such a large sum of money and not having the infrastructure to dole it out, so to say. So we're pretty confident, and we've been in discussions with the ministry that there's a possibility of extending that deadline, but there's nothing confirmed yet. I think as a leadership team, we are in favor of having this extended so that we can do a more rigorous approach to finding what those needs are and finding the community partners and the schools that can help tackle the needs. So you can see here we have 4 more initiatives that we have approved since we last brought this to the board. So we have our athletic fees waived at the middle schools, and then we've partnered with 3 different community organizations to places where our families do come and seek food and seek other needs. And we believe those are the places, we're not going to set up our own food bank at the school, unless this blows up in perpetuity. But for now, we think this is the best way, is to continue identifying good, trusted partners. So I think that that's all. Oh yeah. another big partner, of course, is our schools. And in October, we distributed $600,000 to our schools based on a per student population. So we weren't looking at socioeconomic factors. We just gave it out across the board to the student population because needs are everywhere. We know there's, more affluent areas and poorer areas, but with rising inflation, we don't know the family situation. We thought it best if we send the money to these schools and let them work with their PACs to decide what where best to meet these needs. And I've had feedback that all of our schools have met with their PACs. My understanding is that what one school does isn't indicative of what the other school does because they're responding to specific needs at their schools. So comparing one school to another is not very fair to those schools because they're doing their best to respond to their school's needs. So I think that's it for now. I will leave it open to questions. Thanks.
Trustee Reed?
Food security is my passion, and so I'm all over this. Thank you so much for all of your work in the district on this, and especially highlighting the free store at Squaw First Nation is a completely no barrier food service. It's amazing that the district is supporting it. That said, I am the DPAC liaison for the board, and I have met with some of those PACs, and I just wanted to provide the feedback that it seems like there is room for more education to admin about what activities qualify, that there's kind of different lists and maybe some different understandings because they want to use the money and they want to use it effectively, but they're not really sure how. And I think that there's maybe some inconsistencies there. Growing pains, right? It's food security. So I totally understand that, but I did want to provide that feedback. And I think that, yeah, that was it.
Trustee Prosek?
Thank you, Mark. So you were saying this right now, this is a one-shot deal. But you're saying it could be another shot deal?
There's two things. So one, first, I think I only alluded to the fact that we could maybe get an extension on this existing money so that we aren't pressured into finding ways to spend it by June 30th because we don't want to go into a spending frenzy and not be effective. I would love it to be in perpetuity where they give us continuous funding year after year because then we can really set up and give some thought to doing something sustainable. But there's been no mention of that.
So these people like Bowls of Hope and these people, they know that this is a one-shot deal, so they're not going to this is not going to be something that they're going to expect every year if they don't get it. Like, so you didn't set them up for failure. And just one more quick little question, is the Memialatel program, that was, Memialatel, that was a program we just heard talk about, right? So I think maybe you should talk to them too. I think they need a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Trustee Weston?
Actually, that was my question is, I see Murray Honda gets a bump up. Is there plans for Mimi Athol to get a bump up?
Yeah, it's definitely something we as an exec have to go back and kind of look at our partner groups and say, okay, are they due? Yeah, because Memi Athol has come and used up all their funding, as you can see. I mean, what you see here is us how we've handed out the last installment. I'm not sure exactly if they've actually spent it, but they're in the process. Presumably they've spent it now.
Okay, sure. Sorry. So I'm just going to ask one question and I'll let you. So I have two quick questions. So first of all, part of the reason why it's slightly hard to spend is it's got quite strict parameters on what we can use it for, right? We can't just hire a bunch of VAs with this money. It's for food security, right? So that is why, right? Okay. And because it's not ongoing funding, we can't set up a program because then the funding will just evaporate. So it's kind of tricky. Okay. And then the other thing is, you did mention we gave money to all the schools because you can't tell, there's kids in need at every school. But did we go back and then top up some of our inner city schools more?
Yeah, these guys are saying,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, and then was Cultus Lake included in that? Because I was just, okay, thank you.
I don't have a question so much as just a really happy story. On one of my school visits, Mount Slessie, they were just overwhelmed. They were so happy with the programs and the things they've been able to set up with this money, and just happy kids, full bellies. It was just a delight to visit it. So just wanted to share.
Fantastic. Oh, trustee, sorry.
Thank you. A question through the chair to staff. So the BCSTA Provincial Council is going to be debating an emergent motion advocating for this to be recurring funding, which you can understand when you look at the fact that none of this is new need that's been presented in the allocated funding. My question to you would be, in the interest of helping to inform that advocacy, you've identified the June 30th deadline as being cumbersome. You also mentioned some of the, I didn't quite catch the language you used, but sort of allocating this type of funding is outside of the norm of the work that's done within the finance department. What would informed advocacy look like in terms of how we can best use this funding with the least amount of kind of that cumbersome piece, if this is to be reoccurring?
I mean, I think, and I think I'm just kind of speaking off the top of my head. If this becomes recurring funding, I'd want to see the district, hire a food manager or something. It would have to include staffing costs, or at least a liaison who could, proactively partner with community groups. So, yeah.
Go ahead, trustee Singh.
So if I can tease out something from that, am I correct in understanding that the current structure of this funding does not allow for the hiring of a staff person to help? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate that. We all do. Okay, on to 5.2 Budget Advisory Committee report. Who's that, trustee Swanky? Okay.
Pretty quick.
Thank you, Chair. Just let me find my notes. The Budget Committee met last February 2nd. It's a little bit old news, but I do want to acknowledge the work of staff to bring the changes in the budget to the committee to make sure that all partner groups were aware of some of the unorthodox requests that we received from the Ministry of Ed in order to present a balanced amended budget. Otherwise, my thanks to the partners at the table and for their ongoing input as we reflect on what an informed and productive budget presentation looks like when we get to April. So, and my thanks to staff for constantly reflecting on what that looks like.
All right. Moving on to 5.3 Quarterly Financial Report. Secretary Treasurer or Assistant Secretary Treasurer? You can just give us the basic highlights. I'm sure it's already basically covered by your budget presentation in this case.
Yeah, so we met with the Budget Advisory Committee and reviewed this in some detail on February 2nd, as Trustee Swanky mentioned. What we've got here is a comparison of the actual amount of money we've spent and paid out through the first 6 months of the year. And what we've done is we've compared it against what we believe our internal budget will be. So that's what I was saying earlier. For our internal purposes, we think that's a better yardstick to measure where we're at. Basically, you can see that the revenue is pretty much on track to where we expected it to be. None of that additional revenue, of course, is included in this. This is just where we started the year. I mean, the most noteworthy things are our investment income is significantly higher because interest rates are higher, and the tuition is obviously higher because we're enrolling more students, which was a good news story we heard earlier tonight. The delay, we've just got some timing delays in other revenue, so that's sort of the big story on revenue. Turning down the page to the expenditure side, you'll notice that the teachers' salaries are on track with where we thought they'd be. Just reminder to everybody that we have built in the salary increases here, and the QP groups have not yet completely ratified, so that's why you see such a big difference in the education assistants and support staff. We expected to have paid out, 5.7 for 5.7 million for education assistants, and we've only paid out 5.1 so far, and that's purely due to the timing of ratification. So that's the biggest number there. One thing we talked about when we gave the amended budget was that we increased the budget for substitutes. And that's a little proactive, with COVID and with difficulties in hiring. We wanted to put an extra balance there. I think we've spread it throughout the year evenly, and of course we expect more of it to come in the next couple of months, so that might just be the way we've split the expected budget. So they're the big pieces on the expenditure side. Services and supplies, what was it? Insurance.
Yeah, increase in insurance costs.
Some slight increases, but there were other offsetting decreases there. And then we're using up some reserves, and of course I hate to say it, but those last three numbers, the surplus deficit for the year, just because of the unusual circumstance we're in, they're not good numbers. They're not indicative of anything at this point. I mean, we're really targeting about a $600,000 deficit, and that's, for the year. Where we are so far this year is just thrown off by all these crazy things we're doing with settlements and revenues coming in and delays and so forth. So there's no story that can explain them. They're just the result of some really strange stuff happening further up.
Thank you very
I
much.
can entertain any questions people
Does
might
anyone have any questions? Doesn't look like it. You can push your button. I just did want to point out for new trustees, just who haven't been through this quarterly financial reports before, that there'll often be deficits on different line items because it's averaged out for the whole year, but that's not how schools spend money. So they'll often spend a bunch of money at the beginning of the year, and then it makes it look like we're over budget. But once we get farther into the year, we're actually on budget. It's just schools don't cooperate and spend the exact same amount of money every month. Okay, so we're moving on to 5.4, BCSTA report. Trustee Reed.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. The BCSTA regional branch met at the new elementary school in Abbotsford, which was beautiful. And we would like to extend congratulations to Mr. David Swanky for his election to the Fraser Valley branch president role. So thanks, David. And then we are, the only things I would like to highlight is that Provincial Council is coming up at the end of the month. The AGM is in April, and there are motion deadlines in your package. And the only other thing I would like to point out is that the Professional Development Committee did ask for feedback. So you'll find it in your emails. If you could give feedback on Academy and professional development in general, that would be great. And I think it was an email from...
Yes, I sent it out. I was asked to distribute that, so all trustees got the questions they were asking in their email. You can respond to Pascal Shaw from 42, I believe. Is what. Yeah, okay.
I think that's everything.
All right, 5.5, trustee written reports are in the package for everyone's perusal. 5.6, meeting summaries are also in the package. 5.7, next Board of Education meeting is, is not this anymore. It is February 21st. At the usual time, 5:30. So that has changed from last time. Trustee Prosy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make a point. I don't have a report because I just got my criminal check done.
Oh.
So I can visit school soon.
Yes. So this is something. So we all do have to get our criminal records checked done. So if you just got it, that's. Glad you're cleared, Trustee Prosy. Okay. And just to point out, everyone does their trustee reports different. You'll see quite a lot of variation. There's no rules about how you do it. I only report on the things that other trustees won't have participated in. Some people put everything down, so it's whatever. People are free to write them however they want to, and sometimes people forget. I've forgotten on multiple occasions. Didn't forget this time, but no shade to anybody or shame to anyone who forgets. It's fine. It's just for our mutual benefit, so we know what each other have been doing, and it allows you to put little updates and stuff in there. Okay, and so public participation, questions concerning the agenda. So this is questions specifically on agenda items only, and come on down.
Hi, I'm Debbie Chand. I'm a teacher librarian in the district. It's not a question, it's just a comment. Is that okay? I'll stick a question at the end. How's that? Okay. Would anybody like to go out for coffee? No. I just wanted to say, I would like to thank the board for reviewing their learning resource policy in order to ensure that students in School District 33 have the freedom and right to choose their reading material. I would also like to thank them for recognizing the judgment of professionally trained educators in choosing those resources in conjunction with the Ministry of Education guidelines on recommended learning resources to support both curriculum and recreational reading, while at the same time reiterating the process that parents can follow if they choose to do so. I would like to specifically thank Trustee Swanky for expressing your trust in the professional employees of District 33. Would you like to go out for coffee?
With the loopholes. Okay. Anybody else want to ask a question?
Reed Clark, First Vice President of the Chilliwack Teachers Association. Just a question about the Family Affordability Fund. I don't know if there was any explanation on the district initiatives part of that. Can you elaborate on what the district initiatives are?
So right now, right now the district initiatives, we probably should have renamed it. We're looking at, that was in consultation with our Indigenous Advisory Council, and it was to help First Nation students on and off reserve. I think they give periodic gift cards and funding for various parts of the year, so that's pretty much all that is.
Thank you. We should have probably asked that question ourselves, so thank you for the question from the audience. Okay.
Hi, my name is Linda D'Armani. I want to talk about curriculums that enrich the learning supports, and it says that they're to be of the highest quality, and that the learning resources should be fair, objective, and free from inappropriate images, bias, and propaganda. However, many of the books that are gender identity are far from the highest quality and inappropriate for children in nature, and even promote sexual abuse and incest, such in the.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. That's not correct. They do not promote sexual abuse or incest. That is not true. Yes, I have actually. So no, yeah, that is not promotion. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you imply that there are books in our library promoting incest. You don't have your button pressed anymore, so you need to press your button if you want to be heard.
Okay.
Sorry, it's still not pressed. You have to press your button.
I did press it, but anyways, that talk about sexual incest and abuse in the bluest eyes, and I don't know that that's really the kind of standards, or some of the images are inappropriate in nature, in that they display personal body parts in cartoon form, which I still think which is still inappropriate for children to see. And I believe that that kind of material should not be in our libraries or in our schools. I don't think that they should be banned in the public, but I do believe that they could be in the libraries, if that be the case, but in our school libraries.
Do you have a question?
Why are some of these books that have inappropriate images in our libraries? And I wonder, I heard that Mr. Prosey was mentioning that he had to have his criminal record check, and I wonder if some of the drag queens have to have theirs who are at our.
Okay, so we have never had a policy in our district that performers who come into our schools have to have criminal records checks. Volunteers and teachers have to have and all of our employees have to have criminal records checks. Performers who come and do a play or anything like that do not. We do not make exceptions just because someone happens to be queer. So that is why we do not do a criminal records check on the drag queens who are coming to an after-school event. Thank you.
There we go, Tanya. I just wanted to make a statement, what you were just saying about not doing criminal record checks on drag queens.
That's not on the agenda, thank you. This is not on the agenda. Drag queens are not on the agenda, not on the agenda. So do you have a question about something on the agenda?
Well, I can, I'll do it about the learning resources.
You have to press your button.
Has put out some very compelling information about the sexual abuse of children, which I think should be all of our concern at any time, directly related to this. And it's becoming very well known. So you as a board have to protect our children and consider, something is moving forward, such as the learning resource. SOGI 123 was presented in 2016, 12 pilot schools. In 2017, they put it into all schools. No parents were involved in this decision or psychologists to determine the long-term effects. Now what we're
SOGI
finding...
123 is not on the agenda either.
It's a learning resource.
That's not anything to do with our learning resources
learning
policy,
resource.
though. It isn't anything to do with our learning
It's a learning
resources
resource.
policy. We've passed the learning resources policy as presented. Bringing up this particular learning resources is not a thing we're going to do right now. If you want to challenge a learning resource, you can go to the policy and you can figure out how to do that. Thank you. You're not on the mic. I've told you thank you. So you can go sit down now. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a learning resource.